Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and I'm here to talk to you about the Rode PodMic USB. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set it up with the GoXLR or GoXLR Mini and the settings to use in order to get the best quality sound out of it. There are a number of different adjustable settings that you can tweak within those interfaces. Obviously, they're not the only options. The PodMic USB is actually pretty clever with USB-C connection. It's worth trying that out if you want some good audio because it's got a built-in digital sound processor and other things to eliminate background noise. But if you want to use an XLR connection, as I am here, and make the most of it with an interface like the GoXLR, Razer Audio Mixer, or other device, then you can do that. So you plug the mic in with an XLR cable and connect it up the other end. A few things of note: you will want to make sure this is set up correctly. So not only do you obviously need an interface, but you also need to make sure that the microphone's facing the right way. So you actually have to talk into the top of this microphone. If you're trying to make it sound good, I'd also recommend using that external pop filter you saw at the beginning of the video, but you need to talk into the top. So you can see where it's facing Leonardo DiCaprio here. You've got to talk into the top of the microphone rather than the side. Obviously, we're also going to be adjusting the settings in the interface in order to account for the gain levels and other things. The settings I'll show you will be applicable across a number of different devices, so you can probably follow the logic or at least the ideas behind it. The GoXLR Mini is obviously just a small version of the GoXLR anyway. The GoXLR full size allows you to tweak and customize a few more things. So I'm going to show you that, but the settings are pretty much the same on both different devices, so it's fairly straightforward. So once you've got your PC set up and the microphone's connected, we'll go into the GoXLR app, and you can then customize and set it up. You need to go into the mic section and go through the mic setup process. The first thing here is to select the right amount of gain. Now, this is going to vary depending on how you talk, how loud you go, or how quiet you talk, and your environment as well. So what you need to do is basically go in here and tweak the levels. Talk while you're doing it, and then adjust the level of gain. So you can see the meter on the right hand side. You don't want it to go into the loud section. So if you're going to be really loud, do that as a test and then adjust the gain level to make sure it doesn't go into that section too much. The idea here is you don't want to be clipping, so you're minimizing that risk. The microphone has some good onboard technology to prevent it, but what I found is you can set that gain level at a specific point and then it'll get good sound out of it. And I'll leave all these settings in the description, by the way, so you can see them on paper too of what I found works best for me. But then you'll see you have gate, equalizer, compressor, and De-Esser. The gate is the noise gate settings. Now, this is obviously shrunk down. If you click on it, it'll expand all the different settings. But what I find is the easiest thing to do, the most straightforward way to handle these are to basically keep them in their minimized mode, especially if you're a beginner or this is your first sort of setup with the GoXLR, because it can get a bit complicated. So the noise gate settings work essentially by the lower the setting is, the less noise gate you've got applied to it. So noise gate helps eliminate background noise, for example, fan noise, passing traffic, things like that might get picked up by the microphone. The lower you go, the less this is applied. So the more you'll find those noises getting picked up. If you drop it all the way down, that will then completely turn off and you will find that you get background noise being picked up, which is not ideal. And I'll show you some more tips in a minute on how to sort of work this out and where the levels should be. But basically, you can hear it when you're feeding through into your headphones. So you've got your headphones plugged into the GoXLR. You should be able to hear the sound. So when you apply the noise gate, you'll find it's getting eliminated. I found the noise gate you need to apply to this microphone is actually pretty low. So somewhere around 20 works pretty well for me. Now, if you expand it, you'll see that the settings change and it shows you in decibel format instead. So it's minus 47 decibels. There are other settings for attenuation, attack, and release. As default is 100%, 10 milliseconds, and 200 milliseconds respectively. You can tweak those around, but the best thing to do is just to play around with the threshold. This is the overall level, and if you don't want to make things too complicated, and believe me, it can get quite complicated when you start messing with all the other settings and tweaking it, then the best way to do it is to just mess with the threshold levels. I wouldn't recommend playing around with attenuation, attack, or release too much, unless you know what you're doing, you're a bit more sort of au fait with these things. There are detailed guides on all these things and what they mean. Harris Heller's done a really good one on what they can all mean. But if you're not a sound engineer, then as a basic user, just the threshold settings are pretty handy. So just play around with that and see if you can eliminate some of that noise. Again, in a minute, I'll show you another way to work out whether you've done it correctly, because it is quite handy to see it visually on your computer as well as hear it in your ears. So mic monitoring is obviously important. Now for the equalizer settings, You have bass, mid, and treble. Obviously, you want to put some more bass into your voice, you can do that. You can also tweak the other ones. I actually leave mine as standard as all 0, just because it's a good natural sounding microphone. You don't really need to do too much with it. It's dynamic, it picks up good things. De-Esser, we'll quickly go into. You can see that you can't expand that on here, but essentially that just takes out some of the sounds from your voice. So you may want to just play around with those settings, because that really depends on how you pronounce your S's. So next we're going into the compressor settings. What compressor does is it takes the sort of top level and the bottom level and puts them closer together. So if you're really loud but also really quiet, it helps sort of compensate for those things. So it can actually pay to adjust the compressor settings. This helps to eliminate clipping and also just to make everything sound pleasant and nicely sort of compressed. Again, I will leave what I've got the settings at in the description so you can find that out. But again, you need to just play around with this because it's going to vary from person to person. I'm quite calm on the way I talk. I don't really shout on my microphone, so I keep things kind of chilled out. So these are the settings for me, and you can see them on the screen. But again, it's the same sort of logic as the noise gate. If you adjust the threshold, that has the most impact. You can go in and tweak at other things, but I'd avoid messing with the makeup gain unless you know what you're doing. And then the ratio attack and release, again, the default settings are pretty good and don't need much adjustment in order to make it sound nice. Just try the threshold levels and see what happens there. So you've got those settings at a basic level, makes life a lot easier. Now, if you do find you've got a problem, you can delete the profile or create a new one. Create a new one and base it on the default settings, and it'll basically put everything back to standard. And then you can go through again and play with those settings. So if you've been messing with loads of settings and you can't remember what you changed and you want to get it back to standard, which I actually found is very handy, then you can do that, tweak it, and then start again from scratch. But these settings, and again, I'll leave them in the description, should help. So the next thing I'll do is go into Streamlabs or OBS. And what you want to do is basically go into your settings, obviously find the audio, broadcast stream mix, we want under the mic settings, and then you'll get obviously a gauge of sort of how loud things are. And one of the reasons to do this is you can see then sort of how well you've done in terms of the noise gate settings and the mic setup. Because in a perfect world, what you want is for this bar to not go into the top, into the red area. And if you're shouting, obviously it will, but if you adjust the compressor settings correctly, then it shouldn't. But more importantly, also, it's important to eliminate that bottom end of noise. So you can see that if I turn off the noise gate entirely, so if you just drop the noise gate right down, you should see now that it will pick up more background noise. So there will be some fan noise and other things, and this will highlight. So you can see that now exists. And this is actually one of the easiest ways to do it because you can hear it on your headphones, obviously, with your monitoring. I can hear the background noise now, but actually visually seeing it on a sort of gauge is also useful. So with Streamlabs or OBS open, basically just adjust the noise gate settings in the GoXLR software to compensate for it. And you can see even just a minor little bit there is enough to do it. Obviously, all that's doing is eliminating it when I'm not talking, and you can still hear it a little bit when I am. So cranking it up just a little bit so that you then can't hear it at all is beneficial. But obviously, if you go too high the other way, you'll find it then just cuts out and it isn't very clear. So you drop it down a little bit. Now you can also eliminate some of this by changing the settings in here. So you'll see that it's possible we could, for example, theoretically drop the gain down a bit. And now you can see we've got less gain, but we've got no noise gate at all. So it would actually theoretically be a cleaner sound. It's not being picked up by the broadcast, though I can still hear it in my ears. So we could possibly put a noise gate on now, which is lower. If you find that loads of noise is being picked up, it could well be because you can see now, for example, if you turn the gain up, now it's picking up loads of noise. It's picking up loads of background noise and other things. That's because we've got too much gain on here. I've got 60 decibels of gain. You'll notice that it's not picking it up on the mic meter in GoXLR, but it is in OBS or Streamlabs. So you can basically adjust that down. You want to adjust it down until you can't really hear that background noise. So don't talk and try and listen and see whether the meters change. And then just make the most of these settings. So that's one way to do it. And then obviously you can also use the compressor settings as well and tweak that too. Just trying to get a nice clear sound out of it. I hope you found all these tips useful. Don't forget, the best way to get a good sound out of a dynamic microphone is get it on a boom arm and get it close to you and then put the gain down as much as you can. That will give you a clearer sound and help with background noise elimination. If you found this useful, don't forget to check out the links in the description to other relevant videos. Thanks very much for watching.
You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos. You might well find them interesting or useful. And most importantly, have a great life.